everybody. Welcome back to Psychedelics today. Joe Moore here, joined by Kimberly Juroviesky. Was that close, Kimberly?
You're right on. Perfect.
Right on. Great. And Kimberly, for the people who don't know you yet, you're getting quite famous with the Ketamine Task Force. You're retired from the Air Force and a nurse practitioner. Did I get all that right?
Yes, that's correct.
Right on. And you have a really incredible group and voice going around chronic pain, ketamine, and like how do we intervene in these things. Could you maybe tell me a little bit about your life before kind of chronic pain showed up?
Absolutely. So actually my story is a bit crazy. We lived around the world and traveled the world because we found that life here in the US was a bit crazy. We had moved to Israel for 2 years and almost got blown up on a bus by a terrorist. Actually, my little son saved the entire bus because what happened was we were on a bus from Jerusalem to Tel Aviv, and we were sitting all the way in the back. The bus was packed with people, and I had my son next to me, and this man was sitting next to me, and he kept looking at my son, looking at me, and putting his hand on his chest, and then taking out this prayer book and praying, and sweat starts pouring down his head and his face, and I'm like, I think this guy's gonna blow up the bus, because he kept like bringing his hand close to his chest like he had like some type of explosive device or something. So finally, after an hour of this going on, of him looking at my son, looking at me, sweat just pouring down him, and I can't move because the bus was so packed that we literally were like sardines in there. So finally the bus pulls in and he jumps over everyone and runs and gets off the bus. And I went immediately as soon as I got off and told the cops what happened. They're like, we think your baby saved the bus. So yeah, because they think that the guy felt guilt sitting next to a newborn little infant and couldn't do it.
Wow.
So after that experience, when we ended up coming back to the United States, I had this motivation and drive that I needed to do something to change the world. And the opportunity came to me to join the Air Force. And I was like, well, I'm 37. Can I really do this? I'm old. I'm not young. And the recruiter says to me, oh, you'll be fine. You could do this. No worries. No problem. So I trained for almost a year to get into the Air Force because I didn't know how to run. I didn't know how to do sit-ups or push-ups. I was like the most non-athletic person ever. But I was really excited and really motivated to do it. And I went to commissioned officer training and I joined the Air Force as a captain. I loved it. It was literally the best thing I've ever done in my life. I've always wanted to help people. I mean, as a nurse, nurse midwife, nurse practitioner, that's what I did my entire life is help people. But being able to go that extra mile and, you know, be a part of something and a part of helping our country was incredible. So I loved it. I was enjoying the Air Force, having a great time. And then one day we get called in for a training exercise. Basically, these exercises, what they would do is they would call you up at 3 a.m. and they say you have 45 minutes to report in uniform. And you get to the med group, you report in. And when you get there, they tell you a story. They're like, okay, so there's been an explosive attack. There's survivors. We're going to ship you out on buses. We're going to take you out to this field in the middle of nowhere. And you guys need to find the people who have survived the attack. So we get on the bus and they ship us out and they give us some little flashlights and we're running around this field and 3 o'clock in the morning, it's pitch black dark. And we're trying to find the people they have placed there that we need to rescue. And they're real people, so you have to like really find them. We're running all over the place and I actually fall into a rabbit hole. I caught myself with my arm and I heard like a crunch or something and I hurt my arm. I didn't know what the heck was going on, but I kept doing what I had to do until we got back to the med group. And I'm like, my arm really hurts me. So I ended up going the next morning for an x-ray and it wasn't broken, but they said they thought maybe there's some ligament damage or something going on. They sent me to a hand specialist. The hand guy is like, well, there's like a lot of fluid in there. You've messed up something. Let's do surgery. Let's go in and let's see what's going on. I'm like, and he's like, well, you'll be better in 2 weeks. I'm like, okay, great. Let's do this. So I went in, I had surgery. And I woke up from the surgery and my arm started to swell like a balloon. It just kept swelling and and I had crazy pain, like way more than I thought could be normal. I literally felt like my entire arm was on fire. And I go back to the guy and I'm like, look, this cannot be normal. And I'm like, why is my arm swelling so much? So I went back to the guy and we were convinced like he must have left a gauze in, like something weird during surgery. And he's like, I didn't leave a gauze in, but he does an x-ray just to make us happy. And sure enough, no gauze, nothing. But again, my arm, I just kept swelling and swelling. And this pain was like ridiculous. 2 weeks goes by, 3 weeks, a month. It is not getting better. And I'm like, this is ridiculous. So I started reading, I started doing research. I actually had a friend back in Florida who had this crazy illness called complex regional pain syndrome. And I called her and I said, look, Barbara, do you think that's what this could be? And she's like, it definitely sounds like that. You need to go see a neurologist. So I went back to my primary care doctor and he's like, you're crazy. It's not that. You just need physical therapy. So he sends me for physical therapy. And meanwhile, I'm like dying of pain. I can't do my job. I can't see patients as, as a nurse midwife. And so basically I'm on kind of sick leave. I still have to report in every day, but I wasn't really seeing patients. And I keep going for more physical therapy and nothing is helping. So finally, at month 10, I said to him, this is ridiculous. You need to send me to see a neurologist. So he sends me to see a neurologist finally. And the neurologist says, oh, well, if you'd been here in the first 6 months, there was a chance we could reverse it with a nerve block. But at this point, there's not much we could do.
What?
Like, what? Yeah. So I was devastated. And like, I was so depressed. I was like, how am I going to live? I can't live like this. This is horrible. And then a couple months after that, I had a major fall on black ice and the same pain spread into my leg and my leg started swelling like a balloon and swelling and same thing. It was crazy. So then I spoke to my commander. I'm like, look, I can't work. Obviously I'm not going back. This has been almost a year already and it's not happening. So I get med boarded and unfortunately I get thrown out of the Air Force.
Why did you get thrown out? Or was it like
so I got
a
retired
medical
because
leave?
I got medically retired because I
Okay.
could not do nurse practitioner or nurse midwifery anymore. I didn't have use of my arm. I didn't have use of my leg. There was no seeing patients. And I was really depressed at this point. I was like, that's it. My life is over. I can't help people. What am I going to do with my life? And I always research. Like, I am a huge research person. I read, I research all the medical stuff, like whatever's there, I'm digging through it. I'm looking for answers. And this was no different. I was talking to people, and a friend of mine says, hey, I found an article about complex regional pain syndrome and ketamine. Let me send it to you. So she sent me this article, and I'm like, this is great. It seems to be helping people. So I started making calls and trying to find out who's doing it. And at that time, nobody was really doing ketamine. And there was like one or two places, but they were charging thousands upon thousands of dollars. And there was like no way because I had, I was on disability and I wasn't working and my husband was working, but he wasn't making a lot of money at that time. And it was a mess. So then this same friend says, hey, I found another article about how Hospital for Special Surgery is doing a research study on ketamine. So I immediately got the article from her and I called the number and they're like, apply for the study. So I'm like, okay. So I sent an application for the study and about 6 months later, they call me back and they're like, are you still interested in applying for the study? And I'm like, absolutely. So they make me like a dozen appointments to have to see this person beforehand and get this evaluation and that evaluation because they had crazy strict criteria. In the end, they only accepted 5 people into the study, but thankfully I was one of them. So I got into the study and I got admitted to the hospital. I was in the hospital for 5 days and I was very lucky that I got ketamine and not the placebo drug. And I knew immediately that I got the real drug, so that was nice. And it changed my life completely. I went from being super depressed, super in constant horrendous pain to being in what I call livable pain, because it doesn't bring the pain to a 0, but it brings it down to livable levels. So it changed my life. I was like, this is unbelievable. Why isn't anybody else doing this? So I started talking to people and talking to some other veterans. And I had another friend who was a veteran who was starting to get ketamine through her VA in San Antonio. They're one of actually the few who are doing ketamine infusions. And I said to her, I said, Kirsten, what do you think if we open a Facebook group to talk to other people who are getting this? And she's like, I love that idea. And I said, but I've never done that. I said, would you help me if I do? And she's like, absolutely, I have your back, Kimberly. So we opened this group, and today that group has 10,000 people in it. We actually just reached our 10,000th member, so that's very exciting.
Congrats.
Thank you. And through my journey and through studying and researching, we found out that ketamine is not only good for pain, it's also amazing for mental health and depression, which I found for myself because I unfortunately have depression and PTSD from some stuff that happened in the Air Force and other stuff. And it's literally changed my life. But the biggest hurdle has been access for me, access for everyone, because unfortunately, the majority of insurances refuse to pay for ketamine. And it's very depressing, very upsetting that you have all these people who could benefit, but they can't get access because they can't afford it. Because the most of the people who need this medicine, unfortunately, are on disability, and no one has the money to pay thousands upon thousands of dollars for this treatment. So I formed an organization called the Ketamine Task Force in order to fight to get insurances to cover ketamine. Unfortunately, so far it's been what I like to refer to as a uphill battle. We have not had that much success as of yet. We tried to get the AMA to create a new CPT code, and they basically laughed at us and said, who are we to think we could get such a thing done and such a thing created? So then we tried to go another route and talk to Medicare to see if Medicare would approve ketamine on their formulary for both chronic pain and for mental health. And they've actually been much more willing to talk with us, but they keep saying that they don't feel the research is strong enough, and they want to see double-blind, placebo-based research studies with a lot of people in them, which unfortunately cost millions of dollars. But the task force currently is raising money to hopefully do such a trial. We're hopefully going to be working with a university partner. That's what we're working on right now, and we're hoping we can get this done because we need to bring access to people. I myself have been very lucky. I've gotten ketamine IV, and the place I go to is one of the few that actually does take insurance. But it's hard because there are very few places out there. So there are other places that are opening and trying to make it more affordable. Some places are doing IM or intramuscular injections, which can be a little bit less expensive. And then there are places that are doing at-home ketamine, places such as a company called New Life, who I've actually been trying their program right now, which has been amazing. They do it through it's not troche, it's called a rapidly dissolving tablet form of ketamine. So it's oral. It's not as well absorbed as IV and IM. The oral forms are absorbed about 30 to 40% versus IV and IM, which are about 100% absorption rate. But you still, with a higher dose, can get good success with this type of treatment. And the nice thing is it's at home, so you don't have to leave your house, which is nice. And I do like some of the other things they offer along with their program, such as the integration sessions. I've actually really enjoyed doing the integration. It's a group session, and you get to meet with the same group every time, so you get to kind of form that group mentality where you're healing together and working together to improve your life and change things up, which I really enjoy. I also enjoyed the fact that they use that you get an evaluation with a doctor beforehand. It's not just, they don't just throw the medicine at you. Unfortunately, with some of these other companies, that's what they're doing, is just not even like assessing you, or just throwing the medicine to you and no follow-up, things like that. So I think that's a really important piece of the puzzle. One of the big things that a lot of the ketamine clinics have been missing, unfortunately, is the integration piece, because it's so important not to just taking ketamine is not going to change anything. It's not going to change your thoughts. It's not going to change your way of doing things. Because when you get into that frame of mind of depression, when you get into that frame of mind of chronic pain, if you don't change your thinking, if you don't think that this is not my whole life, that I can't get out of this funk, it's not going to provide the healing. Part of the healing is the process of actually, working with the medicine. The medicine alone doesn't do the changes. You need to do the work along with the medicine in order to really see those changes happen. Like I said, for me, I have complex regional pain syndrome. I could just live my life just being depressed and just being in pain. But I decided, that I need to live life. I need to, yes, I'm still in pain. It does not get rid of the pain 100%. Yes, I have days I don't get out of bed. In fact, I was telling Julie, because she's like, can you meet with me at 9 a.m.? I'm like, no, Julie. If I'm up by 10, 11, we're lucky, because nights are rough for me. Sleep is hard. The minute I lay down in that bed is when the pain really overtakes me again. So I definitely have a lot of bad nights still. But ketamine allows me to get out of bed, and it allows me to seek the help and to try to change the way I think, and not to make my whole life focused about the disease, about the illness, but to try to change things and live life still.
Yeah. Well, thank you for that. Um, really, really big story. And, the fact that you're here and part of this team trying to get things kind of sorted out is a big deal. You know, I, I'm sorry the AMA treated you that way, but that's kind of what I would have guessed would have happened anyway. Um, kind of an interesting organization. I'm sure most of us could critique them for at
Yeah.
least an hour or two ourselves. But it's a fascinating situation we found ourselves in. This drug that's been, wildly helpful with anesthesia surgeries is now showing to have great results with, mental health and also pain generally. And, we want insurance coverage. The drug is cheap. The intersection with, professional staff is like one of the more expensive and complicated parts, which is
Exactly.
kind of why I like these group psychotherapy models or group kind of integration sessions, because it drives the cost so low. That's why holotropic breathwork is often done in groups, and I think primarily done in groups. And the big reason is access and scale.
Right.
And, two people can serve 14 instead of one. That's a pretty
Exactly.
big deal. Um, yeah, I don't know. Like, do you see resistance when you're interfacing with clinicians around group at all, or lozenge versus IV versus IM?
Absolutely. A lot of the clinicians are definitely like IV, IV, everything's IV, or IM is better, and I mean, the truth is that, unfortunately, there are some people that don't respond to the oral. We do see that. There's no question. And I always like to tell people that if you've only done oral, you have not failed ketamine. If you've only done IM, you haven't failed ketamine. If you've only done IV, you haven't failed it. You have to know that you've gotten the proper protocol, proper dosing. You aren't
Redefining
on it.
treatment resistant around the
Right.
drug. That's interesting. I like that.
Yeah. Well, it's the truth though, because like I'll get somebody coming to me and they're taking high doses of Lamictal and they're getting ketamine and they can't figure out why it doesn't work. Well, because Lamictal blocks ketamine. So that it's so important to know that, because unfortunately there's so many clinicians out there who are either not telling their patients things like which drugs prevent ketamine from working at its best, or they're doing doses that are so ridiculously low that their patients get no response, and then their patients think they feel ketamine. And I'm like, you haven't even tried ketamine. You think you failed it, but you've only gotten 0.2 milligrams per kilogram. That's like taking a baby aspirin for a brain tumor.
Right. Um,
So education is like so important. It's just education for patients, education for clinicians. Because we get like every day I have patients coming to me and they're like, Kimberly, why is my doctor giving me zero point 0.5 milligrams for complex regional pain syndrome? I'm like, I don't know. Like, it's crazy. And the funny thing is, it's a lot of these anesthesiologists who are used to using these high doses in the hospital, but are so afraid to use the higher dose in their office. It's like,
silly, right?
it's so silly. It's mind-boggling. That's why I want to talk to every single clinician doing it, but unfortunately it's impossible because there's so many clinics now.
Right. Um, do you have an opinion on the utility of kind of each category? Oral, IM, IV. Really, actually
Absolutely.
interested to learn more about that rapid dissolve tablet as well, but we can get into that later.
Absolutely. So I think if you can afford it, starting out with I think IV and IM are very similar. I've had both, and I actually liked my IM experience better than my IV, which a lot of people are shocked when I say that. IM hits you hard and fast, but you're in and you're out, which I really liked. IV is more of like a delicate, like, ooh, you're going in, you're deep, and then you're coming out real slow. It's very different. Um, I am IV for pain is definitely the preferable though, unfortunately, because we need higher doses, and in order to get those receptors to do that little change, you need to really drown them in the ketamine. So you need that 4 hour high dose treatment in order for the best results. For depression, usually 45 minutes to an hour is the recommended for IV, and for IM, it's either 1 or 2 IM injections. Sometimes people will start with a lower dose IM and then they'll get a second one to kind of push them in a little bit further and deeper. So I think those methods are really, they work really great. As far as oral troche versus RDT, so this was using this New Life program was my first experience with the rapid dissolve tablet. I actually felt like it worked better than the troche. I felt it was better absorbed. I definitely felt a stronger effect and much faster.
Yeah.
I liked it a little bit better because of that. So I'm thinking that in the future, I'm going to tell people to ask for rapid dissolve tablets over troches. Though there are some people who still prefer the troches. I mean, we've had this discussion quite a bit in our group of one versus the other. But I definitely like the way it hit you faster, harder, and also was kind of out of your body a little bit faster too than the troche. Because when I take a troche, I feel like it lasts all day. But I am very slow metabolizer, so that's me. So this did last for me. I would say the rapid dissolve lasted about 6 hours. Not the whole like experience, but just kind of the fuzzy, dizzy feeling like afterwards. The actual intense experience lasted about an hour, and then I still kind of felt pretty like out of it for the next hour after that. But it definitely was pretty intense, more intense than I expected it to be. But I did do a pretty decently high dose versus my troches that I take for pain. I only take like 30 milligrams. So this was 300 milligrams. So that was a much higher dose than I normally take. I did really like the fact that you could be at home when you're doing it versus having to be in a clinical setting. In fact, it's interesting. New Life doesn't tell you to take your blood pressure in advance, but because I know that I have a history with ketamine of the minute I look at the vial, my blood pressure shoots up. I took my blood pressure before and during the treatment, and it didn't move. It was perfect. So I was like, maybe it really is white coat syndrome. White coat syndrome is when you like look at a doctor and your blood pressure goes through the roof. So I always thought, it was just from the ketamine, but maybe it's really not. Maybe I just really do get nervous in a clinical setting. So I thought that was kind of interesting.
It's good to know about yourself. Yeah.
Yeah, it definitely is. Especially being a medical person myself, like you wouldn't think I would get that, right? You think I'd be relaxed. And no, I'm not relaxed in a medical setting. Just the opposite, actually. I know what goes on behind the scenes. And it was nice having my husband next to me because he was my sitter for my session. So I enjoyed that, actually. The one thing I did find hard for doing it at home is, and especially anyone probably who has kids can tell you this, finding the time to do it when I'm not being bombarded with my children running in and out and or needing things or wanting things or need to go places. That for me was hard. So that is the one thing I do like about having to go into a clinic, because then you have that time set aside to take care of you, to do your treatment. And no one's bothering you, no one's interrupting you in the middle. So for me, that was kind of one of the harder things, one of the hard aspects of it. And I could see for someone with a lot of kids, that would be definitely a harder aspect to find the private time to do it. Because even now, my dog is knocking at the door, someone's always knocking at the door. So it definitely can be a little bit harder to find the time.
Yeah, I bet it can feel pretty nonstop. And yeah, this condenses it, right? Like I've had one Capt session and one IM session, and I don't have children, and it was still a bear to kind of organize. And we got it together and it worked out, but in home, it just lowers the barrier a ton. I'm a big proponent of in-home access. I would actually even like to see physicians coming to people's homes eventually, if we can pull that off, or nurses and whatnot.
It's actually interesting that there is 1 or 2 companies who are, I don't know if they're still doing it. I know that they tried it. And I know that unfortunately hospice people do bring ketamine to people's houses and do it in that setting. I'm glad that they have that ability and access for people who really need that. But it's definitely something that's talked about quite a bit. I know there's some concierge medicine doctors who are offering that. Unfortunately, of course, it's prohibitively expensive. But if you can afford that option, hey, why not? There were some providers talking about maybe putting like an RV together where they came to your house.
I was talking about that for Montana. There's so many rural residents. I think that could be
Yeah.
a really cool thing. And yeah, there's so many people living in wildly rural settings with no access whatsoever. Um, yeah, like even getting a normal doctor visit, screening is just impossible. Or just,
Yeah, that's why telehealth is unbelievable. I mean, I that is the one good thing that came out of the whole COVID crap is telehealth. I really the way it's expanded, the way people now have access to doctors without leaving their house, that is like it's amazing. It's really the best thing, and that is actually one thing I definitely do like about the at-home ketamine programs. And is that for people who live in rural areas, for people who don't drive or don't have someone to drive them to their appointments, that it's a big piece of the puzzle that is solved by being able to do it right from the comfort of your home.
yeah. Um, what's the general consensus in your group around telehealth in the Facebook group?
Around doing the at-home ketamine or just telehealth in
Yeah.
general.
At home ketamine particularly.
So there's a constant talk we talk about a lot because
Yeah.
it's there's so many companies popping up right now who are doing this. The overall consensus is that IV and IM do work better. But a lot of people are now talking about using a program like New Life in between their sessions because the cost is so much less. So, like, let's say you're going through your IV and it's anywhere from 400 to 500 for an IV session. If you pay for, like, let's say the 1 month or the 6 time dose with New Life, you can then spread out your IV maybe to once every 3 months or 4 months. So you save money like that. Um, so I think that's actually a really good combination way of doing it. I also think maybe just doing your loading doses IV and then continuing with a program doing the RDTs, or and then just once in a while maybe doing an IV booster is also a great way of partnering the medicine and also keeping the costs down as well. And the nice thing is, because unfortunately a lot of the clinics don't offer any type of integration or ketamine assisted therapy, I think if you partner yourself between IV and doing the at home sessions and then you get those integration sessions along with it, I think that is a fantastic option. And I think so. I think the wave of the future is going to look like some type of combination treatment with people going in, maybe doing their loading in IV and then doing an at home and then like occasionally doing a booster back in the clinic again.
Hmm. I could see that. I've heard similar things with Spravato, but of course, we have our opinions on Spravato. Um, and just to make it explicit, so people listening don't have to guess, it's wildly expensive. It's the only ketamine type product available for insurance reimbursement, but only with very specific indications. I think only treatment-resistant depression, very specific dosing. So you can't do variable dosing at the clinician's discretion, which is really troubling. At a really, very specific protocol, right? So
Yes.
there's a lot of reasons not to do it, but for some people, insurance works out okay for them with Spravato. But I think that's pretty rare. But if that's what you have available, great, and you get coverage, great. But
Yeah, absolutely. I always tell people that if you absolutely can't afford ketamine, look into Spravato and try it. It doesn't hurt to try it. The other thing with Spravato is they have to be on another antidepressant.
mm,
They can't just take Spravato, unfortunately. Otherwise, you won't get the insurances to reimburse.
wow, okay, good to know.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, huh. So, tell me about this AMA thing. So you decided to go at the AMA and say, hey, we've got this data. It's maybe not a
So
ton of data.
basically, anybody can apply for a CPT code. You go on their website, and they have this long application that you have to fill out from everything from A to Z. And it actually took us about 6 months to get through this application because it's pretty intense.
Wow.
And we get it in 2 days before the deadline, so we were set. We thought, well, this is great. We're going to be like, they're going to love us. And we submit this application to them. And then what happens is it's actually very interesting. They don't immediately send the application to committee. Instead, they send it out to all the organizations they think are going to benefit from your new CPT code. like the American Association of Anesthesiologists, like people like that. So then those people get to comment on it. And they sent it back to us, and their comments were scathing. They're like, who do these people think they are? We don't need this CPT code. The only people that were pro us was one of the addiction organizations. They were the only ones who were on board. We were shocked. And then
Wow.
you can't even contact these organizations unless you withdraw your application.
What?
So, yeah, so we had to withdraw our application, and we went and we made appointments to speak to all these different organizations, and they like just laughed at us basically. And the one who we really thought would be on board, the American Association of Anesthesiologists, there was somebody on the board who was getting ketamine for depression. And she
Uh,
laughed at us and said, "No, we're not going to approve the CPT code." We're like, these people are so out of touch. It's crazy. Like, even
right.
though they're doctors, I don't think any of them work as doctors anymore. They're just like, they sit on these boards and things like that. It was like,
It's
it
kind
was
of like a
nuts.
bureaucracy that's not taking anything about reality into play and saying like,
Exactly.
it's kind of a let them eat cake moment.
That's
Not
that.
like
Oh
we
my
don't see
God.
that from politicians too often, but um,
That's literally what I felt like. I felt like these people just are basically politicians sitting on their high horses who don't care anything about us.
ugh,
It
brutal.
was really, it was a big blow. And one of our people who met with them, with us, is an anesthesiologist who's a
Ugh.
member of their organization. And after that, she was like, I'm not renewing.
Right? It's they will in time see that people are leaving because they're just not taking these situations very seriously, you know.
They're not. They don't, and they don't care. They don't, like, literally don't care about people. And like, you think they would, like, the patient. See, this is like so upsetting to me. It's like sometimes doctors or and anyone loses sight of the patient, and that's who
Yeah.
this needs to be about. This is not about you. This is not about your business. This is about the patient, and that's who it needs to be about. And that's why I get upset with some other organizations who I won't name, who at first like said, "Oh, we're going to support the task force and their mission, and we think insurance is great and all that." But they haven't supported us in our mission, and we're doing the work for like them to benefit their patients, but they're not behind us because they like getting cash.
Mhm.
So
That is for sure.
it's a problem.
Yeah. And disruption, I think organizations resist disruption because it's a bother, you know.
Yeah,
We're doing really well right now. Why would we change anything? The
exactly.
answer is better outcomes for everybody. Look at the electric car. There's a film a long time ago whatever happened, who killed the electric car, maybe or something like that. And it was talking about how, yeah, this is disruptive technology. Let's buy all the IP and lock it in a closet. And that does happen because the economics work at a certain scale. So I think it's not necessarily happening here because there's too much opportunity, but I think it's just a complicated issue that doctors find a bother to even engage with. Like, I've had a number of conversations with doctors that have gone really poorly. Non-psychedelically inclined doctors that are just like outrageous. They said something similar to what you mentioned earlier, Kimberly. No, we have really great interventions for PTSD. They just have to get to us really soon. Like, in the military context, that never happens. Like,
Never.
what are you talking about? Domestically, it probably never, barely ever happens too. Like when civilians have issues. So, this is what we're up against, and it's a lot of education and culture shift. And hey, patients want a little bit of control over their treatments, right? Not just
Absolutely.
like, let me just roll over and let you do whatever you want. Like, no, like, I'm not going to take those couple pills because I don't really like what I hear, and these other ones totally cool. Like, people have a say now.
They do. They really do, and it makes a big difference.
Um, are you are you having any luck with physicians with the ketamine task force, like changing hearts and minds?
Definitely. I mean, we definitely have some people. I mean, we have physicians on the task force. Two of our board members are physicians, which is wonderful. See, that's what's different about us, about our organization, is we're not just patients, we're not just physicians. We're both. We come together. We have physicians, we have lawyers, we have patients, we have the tech team, Osmind, who's working with us. everybody wants to change the world, and everybody wants, like, there's so many people who see the beauty behind this medicine, and they see how, we could be different and we could really cause real healing, and not just, throwing pills at people, exactly what you said. But really, because one of the beautiful things about ketamine is it causes a neuroplastic change in the brain. And it's one of, I mean, they're finding that several, like many of the psychedelics do similar type of things, but it's one of the only drugs that does that. There's no, like your typical antidepressant, what- Prozac, whatever, Lexapro, any of these, they don't cause neuroplastic changes. They don't cause an ability for the brain to relearn new things, to make changes in the way it thinks. And that's what's so beautiful about these medicines, especially like I said earlier, if you do the work along with them, you can actually cause permanent changes, permanent improvements in your thinking, in your ability to heal, in the way your brain processes pain. Like, for example, like one of the things I find really important for my treatment is, especially like a couple days after my infusions, is to go in the pool, because the pool for me helps to reset my pain receptors and reset the way my body moves and thinks about pain, because my body doesn't want to move. Like my bad hand and my bad leg, it's so painful at times to move, like literally it just curls up and doesn't even want to move. So if I go get an infusion and then I get in the pool and then I actually do the PT exercises that my physical therapist gave me, I feel like that reset, like that my body is starting to be able to work again and try to work through the pain and try to, make those positive changes. And the same thing with the PTSD and depression. Um, I definitely see a huge difference and a huge change. When I go too long without a treatment, like I notice it definitely comes back, and, it's like the negative thoughts start coming back. So I go in for another one, and then I start to do the work again, and I, work with my therapist, and I work on my journal, and I definitely see like those positive changes and positive growth and thoughts. And there are certain things that don't come back, which is actually really cool. Like, for example, I had a huge phobia of flying, like to the point I could not get on an airplane without taking Ativan. And it's something I decided I wanted to work on in my ketamine treatments. So I literally, like during some of my earlier treatments, I sat there and said, "You're gonna be, you can fly, you could do this," and it really worked. Like I can fly now without taking Ativan. It's unbelievable. So, and that is actually one thing. The phobia has not come back, thankfully. So I'm hoping it'll keep those positive changes, and that neuroplasticity is hopefully retrain my brain not to have that huge phobia and fear. And those are the type of positive changes you can see with psychedelic drugs in the way it works in the brain.
So the swimming thing is super interesting that you bring that up. That's a big deal in kind of the Stan Groff LSD psychotherapy world. Is these primal things, different things like swimming, like how primal is swimming.
And I love it. It's like
Before we breathed air, we were swimming. Yeah, and you probably have specific thinking around that. Yeah, like dancing, movement, like all these things that are really primal, crawling. Like these things are
yes,
helpful.
they really are. And since I can't really dance anymore, I miss it. But it's still too painful. But I do dance in the pool. I bring my music out, and the pool for me is like it's so primal. We swim before we, like you said, in the womb. Babies swim. I mean, that's what they're doing there for 9 months. And if we throw a newborn into the pool, they'll actually swim. I don't know if you know that.
Yeah, I heard it becomes unlearned after a little bit.
four
So I've heard
months,
of people 4 months. Yeah, I've
four to
heard of
6 months. So if you keep
people
swimming
training
right from
infants,
birth,
which is
yeah,
incredible.
yep,
Blows my mind, really. I think there's a whole movement coming out of the ski world. Famed Olympic ski racer Bodie Miller lost a child in a pool recently, and he got really
I
active
know.
teaching infants how to swim, which I found really interesting. Um, so this is your first kind of this is your first go around with New Life. You were trying other oral lozenges before. Now this is the new
Yes,
kind. Like, from what I understand, New Life has a pretty comprehensive app of, I saw pictures
yes.
like a year or two ago. I don't know how much it's changed, probably a lot. But like, what can you tell me about your experience so
So
far?
I really, really actually am liking it a lot. I love that they have people that like. So you get this person. I forgot what wait, that she called, but her name is Court, and she's like my advisor or patient contact person. So she's always reaching out to me, and I actually really enjoy that. Like I get these little messages from her to check in, and she sets up my appointments for me. And then, so you go on the app before your session, your ketamine session, and you type in, you show them, I actually really like this, that they want you to take a picture of your prescription and your dose, which I think is really important because then they know that you're taking the proper amount. And then they want you to take a picture with your sitter, which actually my husband didn't want to do when we did it, but he was right next to me the whole time. So you could submit a picture of your sitter so they know you have your sitter. And then you get to go in and pick your music. And I actually really like their music. I didn't think I was going to, because I've been doing this for a while. I'm really set in my music ways. But lately I've decided that's actually one of the changes I'm trying to make, is trying new music for my journeys. So I picked the classical music, which I actually really enjoyed this time around. And then, so you start the music, and actually like app keeps going the whole time you're on your journey. So you're listening to the music the whole time. And then you end it when you're done. And then so I found this out yesterday, because at the end they ask you a bunch of questions, which I actually did not enjoy. So I spoke to Julie and Brandon about it, and they're like, you can skip it and do it the next day. I'm like, oh, okay. So I wish I would have known that. So that was one improvement I actually had recommended to them to change, and they're going to add that into the app, that it'll tell you, do you want to answer the questions now, or do you want to wait till tomorrow or something? Because I was so in the zone, I didn't want to be bothered with answering the questions. And
I can agree with that too. Like,
Yeah.
theoretically the results will be, less scientific because you took it the next day, but really it's better for your internal process to give time, right?
Exactly. And you just don't, you kind of don't want to, have to like think after that. You just kind of want to relax and be mellow and chill out, which is how I really felt afterward, which was really actually a nice feeling. I enjoyed that. So I did do the questions, though I answered them. But next time I will wait till the next day to do it. So they ask you all different questions about your experience and how strong you felt it was, and did you see any like visions, or which I did not. I just I saw a couple colors. I definitely did feel like some of the movement that I do feel during IV. I got much less nauseous, which was nice, because I do get a lot of nausea with the IV, like terrible. It's a big problem for me. So that was actually one really nice thing. I barely got nauseous at all. In fact, I
So
didn't
just
even
a
take the
really
Zofran.
low dose of nausea, but
Yeah.
possible. Yeah, I know how that goes.
Yeah,
Not
I'm
with
very
ketamine.
susceptible.
But how do you mitigate it normally? Is it some sort of benzodiazepine or
No, Zofran. They give you
Zofran?
Zofran.
Okay,
Yeah, which
nice.
is a nice anti-nausea drug. But because Zofran gives me really bad headaches, I try not to take it unless I really needed it. So I actually didn't have to take it, which
That's
was nice.
outstanding.
Yeah, I did take a ginger pill beforehand. So for me, the natural ginger does also help prevent nausea. So I said I was going to try that first, and if I needed the Zofran, I was going to take it during the session. But thankfully, I didn't need it.
Yeah,
So I was
that's
quite happy
outstanding.
about that. Yeah. And it was interesting because the RDT gave me less nausea even than the troches do, because I do get a bit nauseous with the troches. I got less nauseous with the rapid dissolve tablet.
Do you have a theory for what's going on there?
No, I don't. I don't know why. Maybe because it's absorbed faster into your bloodstream. I mean, I don't know.
Huh. I wonder.
Yeah, but I do know that some of the nausea is actually caused by the feeling that ketamine makes you feel like you're moving. I always call it my
Right.
magic carpet ride, because I literally, when I get my IV, I am moving the entire time. I am on a
You're
jet
actually
plane.
like moving,
No,
or you feel
it's my brain.
internal sense of movement. Okay.
Yeah. So, and because I am prone to motion sickness, that's why I get so much nausea during the IV. I got a little bit of the movement with the RDT, very little, not
Yeah.
enough to give me that nausea feeling. So that was really good.
Trying to come up with some reason why that would happen. I can't come up with anything right now.
Yeah, I don't
Yeah.
know. It did taste not good. I will tell you that. The RDTs do not taste good.
Yeah, that's fair. That's a built-in deterrent. I had
Yeah.
I had one of these kind of lozenges with this plant material kana. It's kind of like
Uh-huh.
diet MDMA, and the flavor was so brutal. But it was a nice experience. But it was like it flavored so poorly. I think to make sure people weren't using it as much. And I think that there's something there. But,
Could be.
drugs
I
don't
do
necessarily
recommend, though,
need
if
to
you
taste
do the
good.
RDT,
Hmm.
have a drink next to you. Like, to take a, you're not going to want to drink a lot, but just like something to take a sip.
Do you
Just a
keep it
sip
in
to
your
get
mouth
that
for
taste.
15 minutes or so?
10 minutes, yeah.
10 minutes, and
I had
swish
a
it
hard
around the
time
whole
with
time?
that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Because it tasted so bad. It was hard to keep it in my mouth.
Yeah.
I think I made it to about 8 minutes.
I think the lozenges I have are papaya guava flavored or something ridiculous like that. You can't even tell because the ketamine flavor is so overwhelming, but
So
it
mine is
definitely mitigates it. Okay.
mint marshmallow, I think, and that actually has been the best flavor that I've found. I tried a lot of different ones. I tried pina colada. I tried bubblegum. Bubblegum was the
Who
worst.
came up with that flavor? The mint
One of the actually
marshmallow.
got the pharmacy in Colorado was where I got those from,
Interesting.
and it's been the best one. I like their troches the best of any of
Oh,
the
I
ones
know
I've
what
had.
pharmacy you're talking about. Yeah, they're a big group. Um,
Yeah,
I was thankfully able to just walk across the street from my therapist office, and there was a compounding pharmacy here. I I don't understand why we have such a nice compounding pharmacy in such a small area. But it was incredibly cheap, and it was, the most expensive part was of course the physician visit and then the therapy later. But um, yeah, like $14 for all those things, but just
that's pretty cheap.
incredible that I was able to get. The fact that I was able to pull this off at all was kind of blew my mind. Um, but I suppose I am well resourced and understand the
Right.
space a little bit, so perhaps there's something
Absolutely.
there.
There
Yeah.
definitely could be something there.
So have you made any kind of political allies, like people in politics who are looking to help you out?
So interesting that you say that because I had my very first meeting with a potential political candidate this past week. His name is Dan Martinez, and he's running in California. And he is very interested in helping us out. And he is actually going to be a part of our political action committee on the task force, which I'm so excited about.
That's outstanding.
Yeah, so that is so if you know other people who are interested in that committee, because that's a committee I have 2 members so far, so we need 4 more because my ideal committee is 6 members per committee. So I definitely am recruiting for that committee right now.
How can people reach out and contact you about it?
Just through the website ketamine if you send me a little ditty about yourself and a resume, and I'll be in touch. And we are definitely looking for people for our political action committee. So if you have experience with that, we would love to have you.
That's super interesting. Yeah, because it's a weird game, right? Like, because typically in psychedelics, I'm thinking about LSD, psilocybin, etc. Not necessarily something that's already legal and available. It's just, access being the issue and price and lack of insurance coverage being the main objects. And this is like a really different fight. Um, and I could see like at a certain point when there is enough data, it being an easy yes. But it's like
I
how do
hope
you
so.
get it to the point where it's an easy yes? Um,
Exactly.
yeah,
And we plan to continue the fight once we do, like, hopefully win the fight for ketamine. We're hoping then to continue the fight for other psychedelic drugs as they become legal. Hopefully, MDMA will be the next one on the list. We call it the Ketamine Task Force, but it's really the Psychedelic Task Force. We're proponents for everyone. Um, you know, if a drug is helping people, it should not be illegal, and that's the bottom line. And these drugs never should have been made illegal. Like that's the shame of it all, because they were being studied and there was medical use, but they decided the war on drugs, like let's just make everything illegal. And it's heartbreaking because here are all these lives that might have been saved all these years, all these people that were suicidal and couldn't get help, and maybe they could have gotten help if these drugs were legal or there was more access. That celebrity who just committed suicide, was it Winona Judd? Is that her name?
not too sure offhand.
Okay. There was just a big celebrity who unfortunately committed suicide. No, she was older. She wasn't young. And it broke my heart because I'm like, if I'd known she was struggling, I would have reached out to her and said, "Hey, try ketamine. Maybe it will help you." I just want every single person to know about, ketamine, and if not ketamine, psilocybin or MDMA, or there are things out there that are on the horizon that can help. Do not give up hope. There is always tomorrow. There's always something out there. It breaks my heart because unfortunately my daughter lost her best friend to suicide last year.
Oh, I'm sorry to hear
Um,
that. That's sad.
And it really, because like we didn't even know she was struggling that much. If we'd known, she was in Canada and everything was locked down. It was during COVID. And like, I just felt so bad because I would have literally flown her out here and tried to get her help because ketamine it makes a difference. I mean, there are people who go in to their ketamine treatment completely suicidal with a plan, ready to kill themselves, and they come out and they say, I don't want to kill myself anymore. So it's unbelievable how the changes it can just even in one session it can reduce that suicidality. I mean, it doesn't for everyone. Sometimes it takes 3, 4, 6, 10, but almost everyone sees some improvement immediately, and that's the amazing thing. That's the incredible thing. And if it's not ketamine, then like I said, try psilocybin, try MDMA. But there is hope. Don't give up hope. There's always hope. As long as you're alive, there's always hope for tomorrow.
Yeah. Do you, in the pain space you're operating in, do you see a lot of suicidality?
Unfortunately, we do. We had one of our big like someone who was really involved in the ketamine world. Unfortunately, when COVID hit and all the doctors' offices shut down and she lost her access to ketamine, she unfortunately took her own life. And all the time we hear about people who are becoming suicidal, or it's hard. It's really tough because pain is rough, and then you get the people who don't respond, unfortunately, to ketamine or to anything. And so that's why I always tell people ketamine doesn't work by itself. You need to try to make some type of change in your life. So if your life is just going to be about your pain and that's all you think about, that's all you concentrate on, you're not going to see the changes you need to see. So you need to have something. You need to try to make those positive changes in your mind somehow, whether it's by journaling or whether it's by going in the pool and swimming or something. Getting a dog, getting a cat, like you need to do something to help along with the changes. Ketamine does, it cuts my pain in half. It's at least a 50% reduction. It's not zero, but I no longer have to focus on that, like my mind just thinking pain, pain, pain. I'm like, all right, I'm in pain, but I'm still gonna get out of the house. I'm still gonna go for an ice cream. I'm not gonna make my life be about the pain anymore, because if it is, then I'm not gonna have a life.
That's fair. Yeah. And, I've had pretty, by my standards, ferocious chronic pain for 4 something years, 5 years, but it's nowhere close to CRPS level pain or phantom limb pain. And I had a friend kind of pass a year ago or so, lifelong sufferer of cluster headaches. And like that kind of suffering was unbelievable. Thankfully, this person was psychedelic friendly, had a good solution for themselves, and was self-sufficient enough. But it was just really sad to see it come on, and you could see the whole family kind of rally around on the symptoms once in a while, and it's terrifying. Do you have any like numbers around CRPS, like how many people it affects theoretically, and maybe like where is it coming from?
I do not have numbers. It still is listed as a rare disease, though you hear more and more about people having it.
Totally.
They don't know where it comes from, but there are some theories out there. It used to be called reflex sympathetic dystrophy because they used to think that it was caused by an issue with the sympathetic nervous system. But they now know it's not the sympathetic nervous system, that it's basically the whole nervous system. They think that it's some kind of, oh gosh, I'm trying to remember because I actually went recently to a scientific conference that was a little bit above my pay grade in my science knowledge. And she was explaining, because they have some new theories about where they think on the nerve that it's actually occurring. And they're trying to develop some drugs that may actually hit those places on the nerve in order to reverse what's going on. But basically, it's like the nerves are not talking, the nerves in the brain are not talking to one another correctly. So they're telling you that you're still injured and you still have pain at a site that you're no longer injured and no longer should have pain at. So like, it's funny because a lot of people will say, well, isn't the pain's in your hand? But I'm like, it's in my hand, but it's not really in my hand, it's in my brain.
Right.
Because it's basically the brain
like pain's
saying
more
that
of an epiphenomenon, right?
Exactly.
Yeah. Right.
Exactly.
And just think about nerve signaling and like the same way like light signals create vision in a certain sense through, certain
Exactly.
processes, similarly with pain, right?
That's 100%. That's a good example, actually.
Yeah. It's the nervous system telling you, hey, something's up, or hey, don't do that. But sometimes it gets
Exactly.
dysregulated. Yeah. Like I had somebody in my life, very impacted by like really strange, mysterious nerve pain, and thankfully we were able to get it sorted. But it was terrifying. 2 years of near total disability, and
It's crazy. It just
yeah.
goes to show what your brain can do to you when you think
Hmm.
about it.
Hmm.
It's like, this brain, what is it doing to me?
I'm linking you up with my friend Court Wing, who's been dealing a lot with psychedelics and chronic pain. I assume you know Michelle Weiner, amazing
Yes.
individual.
I love
And
Michelle. Yeah.
yeah, there's just so many interesting folks coming to the table. I just heard about another psychologist from Norway digging in on psychedelics and chronic pain. So, the future is bright here, and people should be interested in focusing on this. I know I'm going to be interested in focusing on it for a while.
Absolutely. Very much so. And we hope we really want the Ketamine Task Force to evolve and even more to become an advocacy organization, both for patients and for people in the space, and for companies, for providers. We want to be the go-to who's going to help with groundbreaking and changing laws and, getting things done. So anyone who's interested in getting involved absolutely should reach out to me, whether you're an organization, whether you're a patient, whether you're a provider, whether you have a company like New Life or any of these any of these company Field Trip, any of those. We are definitely, we want to help you guys. We want to be the ones to bring it to the world, because we just feel like this is so important. We literally are changing the world right now, and it's just, I think it's one of the most important things happening today in this world, especially with all this craziness, COVID, now monkeypox. There's just too much stress and too much craziness, and I just really feel like we're on the ground breaking of helping people to deal with depression from all this stress and craziness that's happening today, because there's just too much.
Totally. It's we were not evolved to be dealing with stuff like this. um,
We're not. We're
yeah,
really not.
and we've got to come up with new tools, and thankfully we have a lot of them. I'm sure they can keep being improved upon, but we've got some amazing tools right now to help us get through this nonsense and build the better world that
Exactly.
is needed. So, to the best of your ability, are there? I think the answer is no. But maybe New Life. But like, are people looking at lozenges and oral ketamine administration specifically for pain, or is it more psychological
It's
in orientation?
it's more mental health.
Yeah.
But it is actually one of the things we are discussing a lot in my group on Facebook, whether this will work for pain. So a lot of people are kind of watching my journey right now. So I actually put my infusions on hold. I have not had an infusion since January.
Wow. How's
Yeah,
that going?
not great. But I didn't do it for the New Life. I did it for I kind of had a traumatic experience my last infusion, unfortunately.
Oh, we talked about that in Florida.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So I didn't know what I was going to do next. I kind of, I need to get through it. I'm dealing with my PTSD from it. So then when Juan Pablo said to me, "Do you want to try this New Life experience?" jumped on the chance, because I'm like, yes, I put my infusions on hold, but I need something. I'm dying. I'm miserable here. So let's see how this will help my pain and my mental health, because it's interesting. I'm both a mental health and pain patient. And I definitely see that the mental health stuff comes back faster than the pain stuff. So like I'll start to get like depressed again, and my anxiety is the worst. Like I have terrible anxiety, so I'll start to get like a lot of anxiety. And I actually noticed after just one session with New Life, my anxiety is definitely a little bit better again. So I'm really pleased about that, really happy about that. So that's been yay, because anxiety is a huge, huge issue for me. In fact, my husband, like, I drive him crazy because I get anxious about everything.
Yeah. So that's good to know. Um, do you have any perspective on this idea of like traumas or like psychological, I hate to use the word disorder, but I will just for convenience because I can't find the other word, but like psychological situations or disorders impacting chronic pain as well. So like, if somebody could get somewhat clear uh, of that stuff. It's a dangerous word to use to Scientology, everybody. But like what do you think about that situation?
So it's interesting because it's discussed so much. Like so many people say, "Oh, fibromyalgia is not really a thing. It's conversion disorder. It's all in your head." First of all, I want to say that chronic pain is not in your head. It is a real, true thing. But anyone living with pain gets depression. They just go hand in hand, unfortunately, because you know you lose your life. Like you lose your career. I lost my career. I joined the military. I planned on staying in for 20 years. I was like so excited about this new career and the places I was supposed to go to Italy. I was like, that was my next base. And then I got terribly injured, and there went everything out the window. So there was no question that I had very severe depression as well. So I definitely think that depression can add to pain. But do I think that and I think that people who have depression can get pain from their depression, that 100%. But I don't think that like you have to be careful. You have to walk that line very carefully, because I never want people to be like told that, oh, depression is causing your pain. No, pain is a real thing. And yes, you definitely can have pain, depression as well. Like I can be like in a great mood and not have my depression and still have pain.
Totally.
But there definitely, so there definitely should be. I always want people to like, it upsets me when people are like, have pain patients coming in and they're like, oh, we're just going to give you a mental health dose and you're going to get better and your pain will get better too.
Good
But
Lord.
no, that's not how it works, because they're definitely two separate disorders. And yes, your depression might get better with a depression dose, even when you have chronic pain. And you might get a little bit of pain relief, but your CRPS is not going to get relieved from a depression dose. They're definitely two separate things and need to be treated separately. Now, because the pain doses are so high, they will treat depression as well. Like that's for sure. Just because that's the way the drug works in your brain. But but also you still, again, need to do the work. You need to get out of that funk. Like, if you're in pain and you're depressed because of that and you get ketamine, yes, your depression, you can feel better. But if you still keep thinking just on your pain, just on your illness, not doing the work to get better, not trying to change something in your life, try to find something else to focus on, you're not going to get better.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Exactly. It's a multifaceted approach, kind of a holistic approach here that isn't really
Exactly.
important, and ignoring any aspect of the client or patient is problematic.
It
Gotta
really is.
really be
It really
careful.
is.
Um, cool.
I like that you use the word holistic, because that's how I look at psychedelic treatment. I really feel that psychedelic treatments are a more holistic approach, because they look at the whole mind, they look at the whole person. They don't just take into account one symptom. They're looking to make you better and change you all around. And, it definitely is a whole healing of the brain and the body.
Mm, love that. All right. Cool. Kimberly, we're at about time. Is there anything else you want to shout out here to the
No,
listeners?
I think this was fantastic. Thank you, Joe. Thank you for having me.
Oh, you're welcome. This is really fun. I hope we can do it more in the future. I'd like to figure out a way to have you interface with some other folks I know in the pain and psychedelics arena. So I'm going to keep you in mind for that, because it's a really big topic for me.
Absolutely. That would be a lot of fun, too.
All right. And what was your website again?
KetamineTaskForce.com.
And is that the first place to go before joining the Facebook group as well?
Yes, you can go there, or you can go right to Facebook. On Facebook, unfortunately, they like to block the word ketamine. So if you type in KET-AMINE, so ketamine infusions for better health, that's my patient group. We have a separate group for clinicians. At this time, we are not allowing clinicians into the patient group, just because we had a couple issues. So, but we do have a separate nurses group, and a separate group for providers only. But if you type in that KET and the -AMINE, three of those groups that come up are mine. One is not mine, but if you reach out to me also through the task force, I can always hook you up to any of the groups as well.
Outstanding. Kimberly,
And
it's
all the
been
task force emails come to me, just so if anyone sends an email, it automatically comes to me.
perfect. Yeah. Kimberly, this has been amazing. I really hope we get to do it again. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Joe.